Hello there, welcome back. Welcome back to the Technology Innovation Hub. This time is going to be a session from Oracle portal. Right, so if you look at the Oracle portal, so up to now, let me share the screen for you all. Right. Up to now, we have been doing the beginner session. It's possible, yeah. So in Oracle portal, if you look at the playlist and the we have been covering these things there, right? So general introduction has been given, and this is just a prerequisite for all our practicals for existing 12.29 things in the same host, right? So we did that. After that, there were positions on it. After that, I just delivered very basic stuff, beginners. That's why it went as competency level 1, lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. So the series will continue to competency 2, series 3, and likewise it will go on. But that is a beginner session. Now today, what I'm trying to plan, I'm trying to start a session for a little bit of experience resources. That is counting from maybe plus 3 years work in Oracle database, right? And plus 5 years, right? So anyway, anyone who are less than 8 to 10 years. So having certain experience with Oracle database. So I'm going to deliver a set of videos with configuration, which will help you and which has a demand in the industry. So what I'm trying to deliver today with the session is about grid infrastructure. Grid infrastructure, right? We are going to do installation on first grid infrastructure standalone. But this is not just a restart, right? I think you know Oracle restart, just a very basic feature which will allow you to keep the mandatory processes up and running without allowing them to fail, right? That introduced in 11G. That is not what we're going to talk about. We're going to head this session for multi-tenancy architecture, Oracle CDB PDB architecture, container database, pluggable database architecture. So we are going to configure grid infra a database with the multi-tenancy enabled with ASM. Of course, we need to have ASM, right? So that is the very first session. I mean, the initial setup for this series, right? But that is not our objective. Our objective is to learn some migrations. Migration in a sense. In the industry, we have big demand for moving from this non-multi-tenancy environment to multi-tenancy environment, right? You may have experienced this, right? And we are going to plan some migrations from non-multi-tenancy, not only non-multi-tenancy, right? And big grid with ASM, right? For example, how we are going to do a migration from a non-multi-tenancy environment for a multi-tenant ASM environment, right? And we have to talk about advanced scenarios like cross-platform migrations. Let's say currently the client is on Windows in non-multi-tenancy, non-ASM. He want to go for multi-tenancy with ASM. It is on Linux cross-platform. So likewise, so those scenarios going to be delivered in this session series, right? So that is goal of this, right? So to achieve the goal, we will set several objectives, and on the fly, while sessions are going on, I'll explain it little by little. So for today's sessions, our plan is to set up grid infrastructure standalone, right, with ASM. So let's start with that, right? Okay. So before starting right away, right, first of all, actually, let's try to get a little bit of historical understanding about what is this grid all about, right? Grid all about. So I think if you go back to history, because now grid infrastructure is mainly used for clustering, right? But if you go back again history, before Oracle released the real application cluster, they had something called Oracle Parallel Server that was in Oracle 8 type, right? Oracle 8 type, right? So this is way back in 2002, 2003, right? They had the Oracle parallel server. So after that, only the 9.9 came. So 9.9 was the first database which introduced real application cluster, Oracle real application cluster, right? And after 9.9, right, they came with 10G. So that was the first place where the grid infrastructure, not grid infrastructure, the grid control, again not grid control, the grid, the component grid. Grid infrastructure, grid control, those are different things, right? So 10G was introduced. The main objective of G was to say this is a grid-based database. So by that time, what Oracle mean by grid was, this is about resource consolidation, consolidating resources, right? That's what grid means. Right? And again, virtualization also came into the picture by that time. This is way back in 2005 around, right? So consolidation, in a sense, the grid had the capability of, let's say, if you have 5 servers, right? Within the 5 server, it has processing power, it has memory, it has storage. So grid was capable of grabbing all of these resources into one place, centralizing it, and distributing as needed by the end users or the other resources, right? To process the transaction. This kind of thing, consolidating, right? So we don't have to worry about that. But in 10G, with grid, what Oracle did, they introduced CRS, cluster ready services. You may remember, right? Cluster ready services. Because in the clustering world, right, we can divide the total clustering world into two areas, like the hardware cluster and the software cluster. Right? Hardware cluster and the software cluster. So what do you mean by hardware cluster? You know, there are clusters. What I mean, the cluster will be set up by means of operating system configurations. Then the database is dumped into the OS cluster. So this is what have been done by these IBM and even Windows SQL Server clusters those days, like IBM HADR, high availability and disaster recovery. So what they do, they configure the cluster at OS level, then database is pushed into that. So there is no cluster at the database level. It is facilitated by the OS level. So this is known as the hardware cluster. Right? Even SQL Server is just a cluster preparation in OS level, and then the SQL Server is installed. So these are not the active, or it's not real application cluster. So by that time, in 10G, Oracle was the only database who came up with software cluster. So I told you it can be divided into software cluster and hardware cluster. Right? So hardware cluster was configured at OS level. Software cluster is totally on database level. That means the cluster is not pre-configured at OS level. Cluster pre-configuration done by Oracle software itself. That was known as the CRS, cluster ready services, which was introduced in 10G, cluster ready services. Right? So after that, what happened? Then came 11G. So 11G was the first place where this grid infrastructure was introduced, grid infrastructure. So they made grid infrastructure comparison repo install a cluster. That means they incorporate ASM. So they integrated ASM. So if somebody wants to install a cluster, ASM is a must, grid infrastructure is a must. Right? So that was with 11G. Right? So this feature continued. So even now, after that, they introduced a grid controller to manage. Instead of EM console, they introduced grid controller in 11G, right, which is available to manage the entire enterprise with a graphical interface, right? So then after that, 12C. So 12C also, the concept continued, the grid infrastructure. So that is a bit of history for you to get an understanding what happened, right? So now today, what we are planning to do, right? We are planning to install and configure 12.2 grid infrastructure. That is what. So why we are doing it? Because I should have directly jumped into 19C, 21C, right? But the thing is, in the industry, still clients are running on these software. So we need to support them. We need to support their migrations and maintenance. So that's why we need to start from here with regards to grid infrastructure. All right. So that's just a basic introduction. So let's continue to our practical. Right. So this is in the documentation what Oracle says now, because grid infrastructure with 12C, you have the image-based installation, right? So starting from Oracle 12.2, installation, configuration, grid infrastructure, software implemented image-based installation, right? So I'm not going to go into more details about this image-based installation, right, at the moment, because we are not going to deal with this at the moment, right? Because let's deal with these new features with the newer versions, right? And again, we have another feature called, okay, before ASMCA, we have this one also, right? And this one, ASM Lib and ASM filter. Okay, ASM library is there and ASM filter. So these are filter driver. These are two different things again, right? So, but we are going to deal with ASM Lib. Okay, and the other thing was ASMC. I mean, automatic storage management configuration system, the graphical tool, which was introduced in 11G, right? So this tool also there, but our focus is going to be on with this practical is with ASM Lib. This is our focus. So we are going to manage our ASM Oracle Automatic Storage Management with ASM Lib, right? So let's keep other things away. We will be focusing in this practical configuring automatic storage management, configuring the disk and everything based on ASM Lib, right? So we know what is ASM is, right? ASM is Oracle's own storage management technique, right? We know there are a lot of storage techniques in the industry, the traditional RAID systems, SAN, NAS, right? All the things are there. If you talk about RAID, you need a different hardware, RAID control and all, right? Even SAN, we need sophisticated hardware. But when it comes to ASM, this can be configured even in normal IDE disk, normal SATA disk, you can configure ASM, right? And for learning and testing, it is fine. That's why we even you can do this practical, right? Okay, right. So let's start right away with the practical, right? Very first thing is we need to have Oracle 7 OS install and get additions. This has been done. That's why I have given the link, right? So in the channel itself, we have the installation done. So it's a plus point for you. Now in the TNS Technology Innovation Hub channel itself, we have the relevant installation guidelines there. So you can follow it up and you can get the operating system up if you are not familiar with that. From the sketch it is being explained, right? And actually we are coexisting 12.2 and 19. But if you follow the first 1 and 2 videos, this link is directly going there, right? So you will you can get the operating system started, right? So I have given the references here for you, right? So you can follow it up if you are not aware, right? And even the GitHub repository, the document also there, right? So that's the prerequisite, right? So that is done. Prerequisite even now I have my OS up, right? OS is started. So OS is up and running here. This is I am having only OS, right? So I don't have any other things configured. We will do it together. I'm going to do it, demonstrate everything, right? So let's see. That's the first step, right? Then prepare the grid standalone install. So that's the next step. We need to prepare the grid standalone install. So the very first thing is the prerequisite, right? So you know, even for database installation, we run the same prerequisite from the repository yum, right? Oracle has the pre-built configured there, so we just have to call that one. Yum install y Oracle package is there, so RPM. So let's call that one. Okay, let me open a terminal, right? Okay. Right, let me test. So some, right, let's press enter. Let it finish. So once it's done, we need to start installing the ASM library configuration. Right, so you know you have the Oracle ASM support and Leap. There are 3 packages going to be So if you put asterisk, all the things will come up. Actually, no need to have all the things, ASM Lib will be enough, but depending on the OS, you may have to have the additional software installation. So therefore, it's better to put the entire Oracle ASM library package, right? So if you want to take a look at Oracle ASM is, so again, you can just put a Google, no problem, right? So ASM Lib. So I have a bit of explanation about Oracle ASM Lib down the document I have, right? So, but if you want ASM Lib, you know, you have Oracle as they have given explanation about Oracle ASM Lib, ASM library. It's an optional package to manage ASM, right? You can see Oracle ASM Lib. ASM Lib is an optional support library for automatic storage management feature. Automatic simplifies the database administration, greatly reduce, DBS can use the utility to create this scan, delete this, delete this, so all the automatic storage management infrastructure tasks, most of the tasks can be done with ASM Lib, right? This makes this and infra for ASM management easier. You can read this one about ASM Lib. You will understand once you continue the practical, you'll understand what it does actually, right? All right, so we have yes, prerequisites configured and install, right? It's done. Just a small command to run. Okay. Then the next step is install Oracle ASM driver and the support libraries. So let's put the support libraries and the ASM driver, right? Yes, copy that one. So you can see it's going to get installed support and ASM Lib. Yeah, it's installing Oracle ASM support and this one. Yes. Yeah, Mr. Oracle ASM running Oracle ASM support. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, system enables Oracle service. That's okay. Yeah, it's installed Oracle. Yeah, the whole thing is. Yeah, Oracle ASM support. It's okay, right? Let's check if depending on the requirement, we'll get the rest of the packages required. But I can see only the support lib has been installed. Yes. Yes, install one package. That's fine. Let it be for the time being, right? Say yum list. Okay. Oh, okay, let it be for the time being, right? So that's okay, that's fine. Right, Oracle support, Oracle ASM driver and the support library, so get installed. Then, yeah, it is, we have the kernel mode is, yeah, this kernel K mode is not version specific and does not need to be updated. Okay, K mode we are doing separately, so that's why. Okay, that's fine, right? Yum install kernel driver. So kernel driver is the next installation. So let that one to be yes, K mode Oracle ASM, right? It will see. That's how it goes, right? Eventually, there are three packages right away differentiate ASM Lib and support likewise. I can remember that. It's okay. So you don't worry about that much of old stuff, right? Even this is old 12C, but why I am starting here? Because still there are customers who are running 12C, so we need to learn this. That's why we are starting. So for the migration, we need 12C with infrastructure knowledge. That's the reason. Otherwise, we right away jump and start from 19C. But this will be beneficial for you. That's why I'm doing, right? This might take 1 to 2 minutes installation. All right. So once it's done, this might take few minutes because the kernel driver knows it might take, right? So once it's done, what we have to do, we can add the groups for ASM DBA, ASM offer, and ASM, right? ASM admin, right? So group IDs are given. That's okay. That's fine. That's a good practice actually. Add ASM as a secondary group for Oracle user. Yes, for Oracle user, we will add ASM as a secondary user because we are going to have a separate grid user to manage the grid software, but we will add Oracle as a secondary user because we are going to have the database, right? Oracle database also will be there under ASM, right? So then adding the grid user, create the grid user. So you can see grid user and member of DBA, ASM DBA, ASM admin, rack, grid, right? So changing the password for that is done. No, still is going, right? So changing the password for that one, and yeah, make directory. Now here we are creating the directories for, this is for Oracle database actually because we need to have a database later. So at this time, let's create those directories as well. That's fine. That's okay. Create the directories for grid as well. So this is for grid, right? This is for Oracle database. This is for grid, right? And after that, we need to configure the ASM, right? So once ASM Lib is up, ASM library software is up, so then kmod also installed. We can go for Oracle ASM configure I initialization of ASM ASM driver. So it will ask the questions. What is the driver unknown, and you can give the group and automatic startup yes, and so configuration done. Then you can init, right, to initialize the driver, right? Load init Oracle ASM. So then it will show you the mount point where the disks are going to get located. Oracle ASM, right? Like that. Don't worry, this takes little time. Huh? That's normal. That's acceptable. It might take maximum 5 minutes because it's a kernel driver. So let it complete and load initiate Oracle ASM. Yeah, that is once it's done. Then step 5. All right, so we need to go for disk because we need to provide raw disk for ASM, right? Because raw disk means there is no partition, right? There is no file system. So we cannot have a different file system now because ASM itself is a file system, right? So we need to provide a raw disk, right? So that I will tell you, demonstrate how it can be done. So then after that, we can partition it using FDisk, right? So then this will be ready for us. Actually, 15 GB will be enough, right? So because we are not going to have a huge installation here, we are going to have a small sample database. So 15 GB will be much more sufficient because we can have 5 GB for CRS and CRS and FRA and to the data, right? There are three disk groups, no, right? So let's see how this is going to be, right? We are not going to configure resiliency and replication, high resiliency. Normal resiliency is fine for us, right? And create new disk. Yes, this is how it can be done. I'll show you. So almost almost went, right? Let's see. Right. So that is that, and this can be done. After that, okay, it's going now. Right? Once the disk is added, the please use FDisk, right? Let's go there. So, okay, go back and let's finish the, okay, it's almost done, installed, no issues, complete. Right, so then the next step is this, right? Let's add the groups, right? Group add SMDBA, right? And group add ASM operator and the group add ASM admin. Okay, right? Then use secondary Oracle adds as a second member and ASMDB as a secondary group to Oracle, right? ASMDB, right? At ASMDB group, that's what we are doing here, right? At the ASMDB group for Oracle user as a secondary group, right? That's correct, right? Create the grid user. Okay, right. So PSSWD grid password. Okay, done. Right. Let's create these directories for the Oracle database. You know, of course, these things should have been created. Normally, the prerequisites, right? Ran prerequisites. Oh no, directories. Yeah, right. The directories we need to create. We create the Oracle user, right? Okay, right. Now we have. Yeah, now we have. Okay. The directories are created, and let's create the directories for grid as well. First one, as per the OSP architecture we are doing, we learn about OSP architecture and the basics videos. If you want, you can follow that for learn more details, right? Migrate your node from product from grid home, that is fine. Oracle, that is grid base and the home we are defining, and permission for grid, right? Permission and the ownership, right? Executable ownership. They're giving 775, that's normal, right? Let us configure ASM. Let's do that part as well. So that's no big deal. ASM initialization, right? We're not configuring, not initialization, configure. And so you can provide the interface grid, user is grid, right? Owner is grid, and group is DBA, that's fine. And we say start Oracle ASM library on boot, yes. Scan for this on boot, yes. Right, done. So here we go, and we can run init. Now we are initialization. Once the configuration is done, we can run init, should load the driver. Oracle ASM init. So these things should happen successfully, right? There cannot be any issues here. Creating dev Oracle mount and Oracle ASM, loading module Oracle ASM, configuring Oracle ASM to use physical block device. So mounting ASM Lib file system success. So everything is success there, right? Okay. So now we have loaded the ASM driver, and ASM is ready to accept the disk, right? All right. So the next step will be creating the disk, raw disk. So that we'll do in the next video, right? So okay. So I'll do the next video. I will start the video from the next session to configure the disk, right? Then we will add those disks to the ASM. Okay. All right. So I'll stop here. I'll meet you soon in the next session. If you like the video, you can put a subscribe. Okay. All right. Thanks. Have a nice day. Right. Bye. Bye.